Hello, this is Ryan Martin, and this is my case study for EDL 854, Misting Booster Club Funds. What do I know about this situation? I know that we have a school, George Washington Middle School. Mr. Stevens is the principal. He's well liked. One thing about this area is there's a lot of people moving out of the city into the suburban area. So the people who are left are kind of the lower socioeconomic, maybe blue collar workers. And Mr. Stevens really doesn't have a whole lot of help. He's no assistant principal to help him out, but he's doing the best he can. He does rely heavily on parents, not only in the classroom, but at activities. They help with gate funds and they help with concession stands. And also there's a program, mentioned the reading buddies that parents help out with. So the parents are really involved, even though the school population is in decline. We do know that Mrs. Bowman, she's the Booster Club president, organizes parents and helps out. We also know that she has had two children go through the middle school, and she has a third, Lucy, who is a successful cheerleader. And Lucy has been recognized by Mr. Stevens for her accomplishments at school and as a cheerleader. Lucy's been selected to go to an all-state parade. And obviously there's travel that's associated with that. So Mrs. Bowman is requesting funds from Mr. Stevens for the travel expenses. Mr. Stevens denies those requests for the funds, and the next time they see each other is at a basketball game. It's a very crowded basketball game, lots of things going on, and Mrs. Bowman's working the gate and gives the money to Mr. Stevens at the end of the night. He takes those funds to the bank with a security guard, and there's $50 missing. And Mrs. Bowman had mentioned before that there were 10 tickets that were torn, so she didn't use them. But those 10 tickets are worth that $50, and there was a $50 bill spent by one of the patrons. What do I need to know? Well, I need to know, did Mrs. Bowman and Mr. Stevens have a good relationship? It sounds like they did. After Mr. Stevens denied the request for the money, was Mrs. Bowman angry? We're not sure. Who was collecting the money at the basketball game? So I need to know. I know that Mrs. Bowman was helping, and she's the one who gave the money to Mr. Stevens and mentioned the 10 tickets. But was there other people there? Were there just the one gate worker? Were there two gate workers typically? So who else was involved? I need to know, where are all the torn tickets? Can Mrs. Bowman show me those tickets and go through why they weren't used? Because they are pre-numbered. And who filled out the books? Basically, who was reconciling things as they went? Were they marking things down properly? Were they giving tickets in order? What exactly happened here with the $50 and the 10 tickets that were torn? So the problem is there are missing funds at a basketball game. Mrs. Bowman has requested funds for a trip for her daughter. She was denied, and Mrs. Bowman was in charge of the gate funds at the basketball game. And there was a patron, Mr. Dumas, who talked with Mr. Stevens and used a $50 bill. And basically that $50 bill is missing because he knows that he paid with it. So what we need the problem is that has fraud occurred, and why is the money missing? So what happened? So my plan of action is that we need to check with the gate workers and Mrs. Bowman. Was there any time the workers changed positions or left the bag alone? There were a lot of people there, so was there any time in which maybe things got confusing because and people were exchanging money quickly? So we need to find that out. And did Mrs. Bowman count the money before she gave it to Mr. Stevens? Did she reconcile before she gave it? So we need to find that out. We also need to review this incident with the district leaders. So is there any need for any other interviews? besides Mrs. Bowman and the gate workers and people that were there that night? Should the police be included, and how can our procedures be changed? So as we meet with those district leaders, we need to figure out, hey, do we need to involve other people here? I don't know if law enforcement needs to be involved or not, but we also need to think about how procedures can be changed, especially when it's busy. And obviously, in the future, we need to change the procedures. So should we have a security guard, especially with that many people there? Could we have other administrators come in and help? Because Mr. Stevens assumed since everything was pre-numbered and foolproof, supposedly, that he didn't need to monitor as much, maybe. So maybe with another administrator there, that would be helpful. The money should be counted by the gate people to reconcile before it's given to Mr. Stevens, because there's no check in between there. And where are those ticket takers located? Maybe there was possibility that where the table was, they couldn't keep track of the money as well. And should there be more people, ticket takers, or are available at the door? So to resolve these issues, we need to try to collect evidence through interviews with people working that night. We don't want to accuse, rather investigate and see what's going on. See if what mistakes were possibly made. Maybe somebody can identify where they remember something happening, and review the scene. Maybe there's something there. Maybe the $50 got dropped. Who knows? Maybe it went under the door or something like that. Consult the district leaders. What are the procedures for possible theft? Does a lawyer or law enforcement need to be involved? So we need to get that figured out, kind of like the district policies. Again, change the procedures for collecting the money. I think if the location of where the workers were at might have an effect on how money was exchanged. Maybe there was just too many people there. And maybe we're going to consult other schools about their procedures with taking tickets and gate money. And then another thing just to think about is when approving funds, there should be some internal controls, because if there's doubt that Mrs. Bowman took the money because she was angry that she didn't get funds for her daughter, maybe there should be 2 or 3 people who sign off on requests for funds rather than just one, so that we don't think there's any conflict of interest there. So let's debrief the problem. What was I thinking as I read through this? Well, I was thinking Mr. Stevens needs some help. The parents are helping, but man, we need to get an assistant in there to help him out. What did I feel? Well, did Mrs. Bowman steal that money? Was she angry about Mr. Stevens turning her request down for the funds? So I kind of felt like maybe there was something there that some tension or conflict, so that could have caused the problems with the missing $50. What do I value? I value the parents that are volunteering their time. I also value that Mr. Stevens is super involved with activities at school, and he's recognizing, especially like Lucy with her cheerleading. And there were some unresolved issues. Where are the missing tickets? Where's the $50? Will there be any action taken by the district? Not sure. So we come to Standard 8, Category 5, promoting effective and efficient management. So one of the things we need to think about here is having written procedures. Maybe there's definitely need to have procedures for the money from the gate to the principal. How's that going to work out? And have it, this is what happens. We need to ask for assistance from other district leaders in this whole process, especially if it's a very busy night. And then have some internal controls. So just like, kind of like number 1, what are those controls going to look like as the process moves on? Promoting social learning of every student. I think we need to encourage the students to attend and participate in those activities. That's just a great thing for kids. Recognize student achievement, that Hey, here's a girl who did really well with cheerleading. Also, hey, we got a basketball game here. Um, and so we need to keep kids involved with activities, whether it be participation or attending those. But I think we also need to make sure that we recognize, especially that we're using funds not just for one student, but for all students to participate in different activities in the school. And also just be involved. I think they did a really good job of being involved, especially Mr. Stevens, with everything at school, and be a positive model for those kids so they learn how we can function as a school as a cohesive group. And then promoting the academic learning of students. We need to keep parents involved, especially like those reading buddy programs. Anything they can do to help out in the classrooms. And you again use school funds to help promote the learning. I'm just thinking things like field trips and guest speakers, and so all the funds that we collect um, need to be accounted for so that we can put on those programs for those kids and keep them at the forefront of their learning. Need to keep the community involved, encourage business to come talk to kids about the impact of education. Um, and it sounds like there's lots of involvement in this particular school, but keep those parents coming in, talk to those kids, and then have students be involved with the fundraising events. So I think it'd be a great learning experience for those kids, maybe to help with those concession stands with the supervision of adults, and maybe help with the taking in the tickets, and use that as a very good learning experience for those students. Um, this is the end of my presentation. Hope you enjoyed it, and have a wonderful